He's Grant Hill of Turner Sports and CBS. How are you, Grant?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. What was that like watching UMBC take out Virginia, Grant? What was that like? Walk me through it, please.
Yeah, it was. I was in total disbelief, and you just felt like, early in the game, you felt like at some point Michigan's going to make a run, or excuse me, not Michigan. I heard you mention Michigan.
Yeah,
Virginia. Virginia was going to make a run, and obviously the way they played, they don't play with a lot of pace. But you just felt like at some point, okay, things would turn, and particularly coming out of halftime, where adjustments are made, and Virginia had a couple guys in foul trouble. I think Wilkins was in foul trouble, and it was almost as if at halftime UMBC felt, wow, we're just as good as this team. We can beat this team. So they were the team that came out in that second half. The score was tied 21-21, and it was just an unbelievable performance second half defensively and, of course, on the offensive end against the best defense, a team that just smothered other teams defensively. Teams could not score. They couldn't get into the paint. The dribble penetration was non-existent against them. And UMBC could do whatever they wanted. And so it was just, even as the second half started, and it was like they just got more and more confident as the game wore on. And so I probably did a horrible job on the call because I was shocked.
No, you guys were great. But you were giving voice to what we were all thinking watching it, Grant. I mean, at one point, I think Nance even said the rhetorical question of what is happening to Virginia. I think that came out of his mouth and it was great because that's what was coming out of my mouth. And I'm sure down in Virginia, there might have been an expletive or two coming out as well.
Well, you're right, and it was so out of character. I mean, Virginia, a team that throughout the regular season, dominating in the ACC, which you could argue and say was the top conference or one of the top conferences this year, but just never being rattled, never being worried, upset, playing the way they played, and just having their composure. And you saw that they were rattled. They couldn't figure this team out. They couldn't stop them. That was the first thing. And offensively, once they got down, Virginia not very good at playing catch-up, although twice they were down double digits in the regular season, and they came back and won those games. But it was just watching this team sort of implode in part, but also watching this Cinderella story, this UMBC team just have an unbelievable game was shocking. And look, here's the thing. I was worried. Here you are. We're broadcasting that day, and the first day of the tournament is always the hardest day because you have 4 games, and it's like climbing a mountain. And the Virginia UMBC game was going to be the last game of the day, and you're just thinking, oh, it's going to be a slow game, slow pace. I even thought I watched 4 games of UMBC prior to that game. I watched their conference tournament games. I watched the regular season game they had against Vermont in their conference. And I'm thinking, they may not score against Virginia. Like, that was sort of, full disclosure. That was what I was thinking as I'm preparing. And I'm just like, oh, this is going to be so hard to maintain a level of energy. And it turned out to be the best game. And this team, not only did they score, I mean, they had the best offensive performance against the number 1 defense in all college basketball. Truly amazing.
Yeah, and that's the personification of March Madness. It's something, again, that we won't forget. Grant Hill here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, now let's get to the Midwest region in Omaha where you, Nance Raftery, and the crew are heading. Duke playing the 2-3 zone, Grant. What do you think about that, taking on Syracuse with their own defense?
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse is funny. This is a team that, once again, you have to credit Boeheim and the job he does and just how he seems to get his team ready at the right time of the season. They had a run a few years ago that no one expected. They got to the Final Four, and this team is more than capable. I think the thing that helps Duke in this case is that they've seen the zone. They've seen Jim Boeheim's zone and how they play, and they've seen this team in the regular season. And so that helps. That helps tremendously. I think, sometimes a team like Syracuse, because they're so long and athletic and so connected in that zone, a lot of teams out of conference aren't accustomed to playing against that zone. Obviously, Boeheim and Coach K are great friends. They coached together for, I think, 10, 12 years in USA basketball. So they're both, very familiar, which also works in Syracuse's favor as well. So because they're an 11th seed, you should not look past them. They are more than capable of being Duke. They're not going to be intimidated by Duke. They beat a very good Michigan State team at home virtually in Detroit. And so, it's going to be tough. I mean, I think Duke's going to want to try to get out a little bit in transition, try to get some easy baskets before Syracuse's zone sets up. And Syracuse right now is just, there's a good rhythm. There's a good rhythm to their game. They're comfortable. They're confident. They're doing a great job on the offensive end. Michigan State, a great defensive team, Tom Izzo. This is not a normal 2 seed versus an 11 seed. It could go either way.
And then, if I had told you, Grant, or most people before the tournament, that we would see the first tournament since 2004 in which 2 1 seeds would not make the Sweet 16, and you had to choose which of the 2 1 seeds wouldn't make it, I would proffer to say Kansas would be in a lot of those answers based on some of the disappointments we've seen from the Jayhawks in recent years. Yet there they are, taking on a Clemson team that eviscerated Auburn. I mean, just took them apart. How do you see that one playing out in Omaha?
That's going to be an interesting game.
Right.
Kansas, not your typical season. The Big 12, I think, was really tough this season. Very talented. I think that they had some moments there. Played good ball at the end. And then Bill Self. I mean, he's been here. He's won before. He's got some. Devontae Graham is just a special player who, as a senior, provides not just great play but great leadership. But wow, this Clemson team! I mean, they are something else. They defend. They can really score the basketball. They have 3 guys on the perimeter who are all shot makers, playmakers, all capable of scoring from 3, getting to the basket. They have great spacing on offense. And they went against New Mexico State in the first round. And New Mexico State, I think, was the 4th or 5th best defense. And they just, they had their way. They did whatever they want. And, of course, the Auburn game, Auburn, another really good defensive team and also a good offensive team, actually, a team that can really score. They went through a 10, 12-minute period there to end the first half where they didn't score a field goal. So, Clemson, sort of not a team that we're accustomed to seeing play this second week, but they're more than capable and more than, capable of going out there and beating Kansas. And so, look, when we did the selection show, we did a little hit, our broadcast crew, after the AAC tournament.
Yep.
And, one of the things that stood out before the game started was that Midwest Conference looks tough. When you looked at the top 4 seeds, you looked at Kansas, you looked at Michigan State, you looked at Duke, and I can't remember
on Auburn.
In Auburn,
yeah.
Yes. I mean, you were just thinking, wow, this is pretty special. And even though those teams got upset, the teams that are there are very, very good. So I'm excited to be there. I've never been to Omaha. I hear it's a great basketball town. It's a great city. And I think we'll have some great games there this upcoming weekend.
And then before I let you go, Grant, I've got so many people saying, "Hey, what a golden opportunity this is for Michigan. The 1 and 2 seeds are out, and then they're going to take on maybe a 5th-seeded Kentucky, which would be obviously a lot going on there. But there's a 9 and 11 and a 7 in the South." Of course, there's a 7th seed in Texas A&M that looked terrific, destroying North Carolina in front of your eyes. How do you see that matchup between Michigan and Texas A&M?
Wow, this Texas A&M team is really good.
They are.
We saw the Michigan team. We did the Big Ten conference tournament, the semis and the finals, and obviously very familiar with Coach Beeline and how they play and how what kind of success they have. And they obviously, they got lucky there. I'll say that there against Houston. But I do think to win a championship at some point, you have to be lucky. And and so they got past Houston. But Texas A&M, they have, first of all, they start 3 guys that are 6'9" or taller, and they have great size inside. Robert Williams is just, I mean, every rebound, every block shot, every time he jumps, it's just like, it's a sight to see. And, of course, Davis is a big body, post up well, very skilled, very good at getting to the free throw line. They have the kid Hogue, who's 6'9", small forward, kind of does everything, beautiful shooting stroke. They're big, they're quick, they defend. They're a potential Final Four team. You know, they're a team that could even win it. I mean, I was so impressed with their collective effort, their defense, their offense. The point guard Starks, he's the key. He's a guy who is a shoot first, loves to score.
I heard you said he loves short clocks. I heard that phrase.
Exactly, he does. He does. And he look, we met with the kid, we visited with him in between the first round and the second round. He talked about how, you know, learning to become more of a decision maker and a playmaker and a facilitator
instead of a shooter.
His instincts, he wants to score. And so we know that to win a championship, to beat a Michigan team that's so good on both ends of the floor, the point guard play is essential. But Michigan, I mean, they're good. They're defending this year. I mean, that's the thing. They're really getting after you on the defensive end. They got good. I think they're more athletic than they have been in recent years. Wagner sort of can do it all, spaces the floor, the beeline offense. So that is going to be a really, really good game, and that's not going to be an easy opponent for the Wolverines.
Before I let you go, Grant, you know, I'm going to the game. It's here in Los Angeles. I'm bringing my family, and I'm really nervous about jinxing them, just physically being there, because I'm like that superstitious guy, Grant. So I ask you, who's the most superstitious person you've ever been around, played with? You can include yourself, coach. Who's the one that's always been the most?
Well, the most superstitious person I've ever been around is my dad. And, you know, I mean, I didn't obviously play with him or anything, but you know, during the tournament run and even my entire 4 years at Duke, my mom would say that, you know, he would wear the same clothes. He would, you know, go to the same restaurant if we were on the road and we won that first game on a Friday. You know, he'd go to the same restaurant, and everyone had to sit in the same seats, and everyone had to order the same meal that they had the day before or the day of that previous game. And she said, my mom said he would wear, you know, he'd wear this sort of white button-down shirt, and he'd only bring one. And so he'd wear it, you know, the first game, and then he'd wear it again the next day, and he didn't get it cleaned. And so, but he is by far the most superstitious person that I know. And, you know, hey, whatever he was doing, it worked, because we had some pretty good success back then when I was in school.
Did he get it from his Cowboy days? Is that where he got it from? Cowboy?
I don't know. I think he's just like that. I mean, he doesn't believe you can't split the pole. So if you're walking down the street and you walk back around, like, you can't split the pole. If you see a black cat, like, he's all, you know, very superstitious.
Wow.
And so he'll probably be mad that I told the whole world.
No, it's all right. But before I let you go, last thing. Again, he did allow Roger Staubach to name you, though, when it all came down to it. Is that a true story?
You know what? It's a true story, and it's one of those stories that I was told when I was little, and I grew up in D.C., big Cowboys fan. So that was what I would always brag about. But I never really had confirmation on that story. And you know, Roger Staubach and his family are good family friends. So, you know, I got a little older. I asked him, and he said it was a true story. You know, my dad was expecting a girl, and that was at a time when you couldn't find out the sex of the baby. And he had all these girls' names picked out. And, you know, and so obviously I came out. I wasn't a boy. But, you know, so, you know, I was baby boy Hill for like 2 or 3 days in the hospital. And like a good quarterback, he came in, took control of the huddle, and came up with that name. So it's pretty cool. And, you know, it's good that, you know, as a Cowboy fan, to have the ultimate Cowboy responsible for your name is not bad.
Great story, Grant. Love listening to you. Like I said, really enjoying the call with you and Raftery and Nance and the whole CBS crew. It's great. Thanks for the call in here, Grant.
All right, I appreciate you. Thanks, Rich.
You got it. It's Grant Hill at Turner Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.